I'm Alyssa, I'm a dietitian, and we're going to go through everything you can do nutritionally to help support your immune system. So first of all, when we talk about immunity, it really just means your body's innate ability to fight off disease. I'm going to start with something that arguably has nothing to do with nutrition, and that's sleep and stress. Making sure that your sleep is adequate is probably the number one thing that you can do to help support your immune system. People that sleep less than 6 hours each night are more likely to catch the common cold. In general, adults should shoot for at least 7 hours of quality sleep each night, and teenagers at least 8 hours of quality sleep. Try to avoid bringing electronics into bed with you or watching TV in bed. Make sure your room is dark and cool and you stick to a regular sleep schedule. Stress can actually suppress your immune system, so make sure you're practicing some kind of stress relieving activity regularly. It could be something like laughter, play, meditation, journaling, yoga, mindfulness exercises, or working with a licensed therapist. Managing stress includes not killing yourself in the gym and taking rest days when needed. Prolonged exercises like running a marathon can actually suppress your immune system, but doing moderate exercise regularly can actually help support your immune system. Plus, regular exercise can help with your sleep quality. Next is hydration. When you're dehydrated, it actually increases your susceptibility to bacteria and viruses, and adequate hydration helps with gut health, which is another important barrier to infection. Fluid needs are really different person to person and even season to season, so the best way to determine if you're hydrated is the color of your urine. If it's like a lemonade color or lighter, you're probably doing pretty good and are hydrated. Keep in mind that the goal is not to have clear urine. It's actually possible for water to become toxic if you drink too much and you don't get adequate electrolytes. So keep in mind that lemonade color as kind of your goal for your urine. Shooting for about 60 to 80 ounces of water each day is a good general starting point. Next is undereating. Undereating in general, and specifically undereating carbohydrates, can again suppress your immune system. So make sure that you're eating enough carbohydrates to support your activity. The more activity you do, the more carbohydrates you should eat. If you're pretty sedentary and don't do much exercise, focus on having about a tennis ball size portion of carbohydrate, preferably high fiber carbohydrate, with each meal. Could be brown rice, oatmeal, wild rice, quinoa, potatoes, buckwheat, barley, whole wheat, beans, and lentils. If you're very active, your plate might need to be about half carbohydrates. And depending on how active you are, you might have to shoot for lower fiber carbohydrates because fiber slows down the digestion and it might lead to some GI distress when you're doing activity. Keep in mind that carbohydrate needs are extremely individual, so if you need help, reach out for individual nutrition counseling so I can give you specific recommendations. Next is vitamin D. I did a video previously on vitamin D supplementation, so I'll link that below, but it's really important that you get your vitamin D levels tested. If you live in the northern latitudes, like most of the US, Canada, and Europe are in, then your vitamin D status is probably going to drop over the winter. During winter months, we don't get as much of that UVB ray exposure like we do in the summer months. In the summer, we can actually synthesize vitamin D from that UVB exposure. However, we don't get that in the winter months, so our bodies don't make as much vitamin D. After getting tested, if your vitamin D status is low, then you should probably supplement, especially if it's during the winter months. Now, if it's just impossible for you to get a vitamin D test for whatever reason, supplementing with 1,000 to 2,000 IUs per day is probably okay, but keep in mind that the vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin, so it is possible to get too much of it. So it's really important that you get tested and or work with a dietitian or doctor, someone that understands vitamin D and your specific needs. Next is gut health. We mentioned this when we talked about hydration, but the gut plays a lot of important roles in supporting your immune system. The single best thing you can do to support your gut is to eat enough fiber. Most of us need to get about 25 to 35 grams of fiber per day from whole foods and not from supplements like protein bars that have extra fiber added or things like Beneful. Eating fermented foods that have probiotics might also help to support the gut. Things like yogurt, sauerkraut, kimchi, kefir, and natto. You want to make sure that these products, though, aren't pasteurized because we want the live bacteria. For now, just focus on getting those foods and skip the probiotic supplement. We just don't know enough about which specific bacterial strains are most important, so just focus on getting it from food. Next, zinc. Zinc is a mineral that plays a role in regulating the immune system, and it's actually been proven that if you start taking zinc lozenges at the first signs of a cold, it can help reduce the severity and the duration of a common cold. It's actually possible if you take a daily zinc lozenge, it might help you prevent getting the common cold as well. Taking any kind of mineral in supplement form is really tricky, and I probably wouldn't suggest it unless you're working with some kind of medical professional personally. There's a lot of mineral to mineral interactions, and if you take too much of one, it can inhibit the actions of another mineral and actually lead to a deficiency in other minerals. So focus first on your dietary intake of zinc. Oysters and liver are two of those powerhouse foods that just contain a ton of the nutrients that a lot of us lack, and they're both really high in zinc. If you like oysters and liver, eat them regularly. However, zinc is one of those nutrients that we can't absorb a ton of at one time. So for example, if you're trying to get your zinc from oysters, try just having 1 or 2 oysters a couple times a week. Unfortunately, most of us, me included, don't like oysters or liver. So if you don't, here are some other foods that are high in zinc. Seeds, specifically sesame, pumpkin, and watermelon seeds, beef and other red meat, dark chocolate or pure cocoa powder, peanuts, fish, and some grain products like cereal that are fortified with zinc. Because of the nutrient to nutrient interactions that zinc has, it's important to talk to a dietitian that's savvy in supplements first before supplementing with zinc. And if you do supplement, choose any zinc that is not in the form of zinc oxide. Next, vitamin C. This is typically the nutrient we think about when we think about immunity, and it is critical for our immune system. Think about getting adequate vitamin C from foods. Most of your fresh fruits and vegetables are actually going to be decently high in vitamin C, and as long as you're eating fresh fruits and vegetables, you're probably getting enough. But specifically, foods like bell peppers, guavas, currants, kale, broccoli, kiwi fruit, chili peppers, jalapeno peppers, and mustard spinach are especially high. Aim for 2 cups or more of vegetables daily and 1 cup or more of fruit daily. Vitamin C is similar to zinc, that if you take a vitamin C supplement at the first sign of a cold, it might help reduce the duration and severity. And lastly, elderberry. This is a plant that might help combat the common cold, the flu, and potentially other virus infections. Typically, we take this in the form of a lozenge, a capsule, or a syrup, and about 300 milligrams per day seems to be a safe daily dose, but you might want to increase that dose to 700 to 1,000 milligrams per day when the threat of infection is high, like when you're traveling or you know you're going to be around a lot of people indoors. You just don't want to maintain that higher dose for more than 2 months. And remember, with all of these supplements, these are general recommendations, but you should really be working with a medical professional such as a dietitian that understands supplements to give you specific recommendations for your individual needs. And as a last note, smoking and alcohol both suppress the immune system as well. So focus on the things that are going to make the biggest impact, like getting your sleep right, managing stress, and just eating a wide variety of fresh food. Then if you want to take a little bit deeper dive, you could potentially look into some of those supplements. If you have any questions or you want to reach out to work with me, use the link in the description below.